Hello, and welcome to Senior Code Review Buddy. My name is Chris, and today I'm going to talk about why you should write a technical design doc, or tech docs as I usually refer to them, and what they are good for. I was also going to talk about how to write a tech doc, but just talking about the why ended up taking up more time than I'd expected, so I'll be releasing that video as a follow-up to this one. I've also got a bonus tip near the end about what to do if your tech doc is rejected, so stay to the end to hear that. I've seen many different types of tech docs over the years. Different companies, or even different teams within a company, have had their own templates or style. Some documents have been extremely long, while others are just a page or two. Each place will probably have a different explanation for why they write tech docs as well. It could be to address certain legal requirements, or just preferences of the senior engineering leadership team. This explanation will likely have a heavy influence on what these tech docs look like, as they'll be trying to address these points. When I think about tech docs, I generally use the following description. A tech doc is a document describing how to solve a problem that is potentially challenging or contentious, allowing solutions or consensus to be generated before writing code. Now, this is just my definition and doesn't cover every case where I've seen technical documents required, because, as I said, sometimes companies just have policies stating when tech docs need to be written, and in those cases, you just need to follow those policies. But I think it covers the cases that I think matter most. I'll talk about this description in parts because while it is a small statement, I think it does a great job of explaining the what, why, when, and how of a tech doc. First off, and maybe obviously, I think a tech doc should be a document. It could be a written document or a slide deck, but I think it needs to be something that can be passed around, commented on, and edited. This means that it can evolve as you learn things when writing it and reviewing it with others. You can change your approach and evolve things to have an ideal outcome. This is why a video of a presentation can't be a tech doc, neither can a Slack discussions. Those can be things that you reference in a tech doc or are the impetus for starting one, but I don't think they can be a tech doc. They're too static. So in my description, I give two reasons for writing a tech doc. It is solving a problem that is potentially challenging or potentially contentious. I use the word potentially here because I think that in both cases, it's better to err on the side of writing a tech doc and finding out that you didn't need it than to not write a tech doc and find out that you needed it. So that kind of explains the conditions when I think you should write a tech doc. But why do I think you should write one in these cases? Well, it's because in both of these cases, it seems like there might be a big challenge that you'll need to overcome to solve the stated problem. And I think you should address those challenges before starting code. Why do I think you should address them before starting code? At a high level, that's because I think it's a lot cheaper to change a tech doc than it is to change code that has already been written. But let's dig into each side in a little more detail and see exactly what I mean. If there are challenging technical issues, it can be very beneficial to think about that ahead of time and sketch out the bones of a solution in a tech doc before starting to code. If you just start by coding, you might code yourself into a corner. By taking the time to write a tech doc before starting a challenging problem, I think it's more likely that you'll be able to come up with a cleaner and better fitting solution. And as I already mentioned, it's also much easier to throw aside a solution that doesn't work for something better when it's just a few paragraphs in a document, as opposed to when you've landed half of the code and it's already been written, tested, reviewed, and landed. Even if you don't think it's challenging, maybe check around first to see what other people on your team think. At this point, you are likely the most knowledgeable person about this problem. You've been thinking about it longer than anyone else, so even if it seems straightforward to you, that might just be due to how much time you've spent thinking about it. Writing the tech doc in this case can help your team learn and can help them understand why the approach you picked is the best approach. And it's generally much easier for people to learn about a solution from a tech doc than from a series of PRs. I'd also say that generally, if a design is going to need more than one person working on it, that means it's probably complex enough for a tech doc. Alignment is tricky, and tech docs, even very short ones, can be really helpful for ensuring that all of the involved engineers are aligned and understand the solution. Now, jumping over to the potentially less technical side, I said you should write the document if the solution could trigger some contentious discussions. If you think you might get pushback from anyone at any point when trying to complete your solution, it's probably best to get in front of that pushback and address it as soon as possible. This could be any type of pushback, from disagreement on what third-party library you picked, to how data should be stored in the database, how exactly the code will be launched. Anything that you think could be contentious. By front-loading these discussions to when the tech doc is being written, everyone can work together to come up with the best solution. And it's easier to change directions at this point when all that needs to be changed is some paragraphs in the tech doc, as opposed to a whole series of classes that you've maybe already written. And not only is it easier to make these changes, but you've not invested as much time into them, so you probably will be more open to changing if it makes sense. An important point here is that you aren't just creating discussions that weren't going to happen anyhow. You're getting ahead of them by having these discussions in the tech doc. If you don't have these discussions in a tech doc, they'll probably still end up happening, but probably at a much more inconvenient time. Maybe after you upload your first PR, someone points out that this approach isn't allowed for a certain reason. So all the time you spent working on that PR is kind of wasted time now. Or what if someone raises a legitimate concern about the approach right before you're going to launch it? Maybe dealing with privacy issues. It can be very stressful to deal with these challenging discussions at a point where you maybe feel like they're just blocking you. You've already done all the work. You kind of just want to launch now. And if you need to do something to address their concerns here, it'll probably just be a bolted-on solution that won't be as clean as if it had been considered from the beginning. Or you could even end up losing all of your work and have to start from scratch if you can't adjust your solution. In any case, having the discussion later is probably going to lead to suboptimal code and a much more stressed out engineer. Here's my one bonus tip I wanted to talk about. What happens if you write a tech doc and it ends up rejected and you don't work on it? And by rejected, I don't mean your solution wasn't picked and you did something else. I'm talking about the case where people look at the problem and decide, we don't actually need to solve this at all. We're not going to follow up any tech doc here. So what do I think you should do? I think you should celebrate. And I'm 100% serious about that. If the end result of writing a tech doc was that people decided the solution wasn't needed, then this means that tech doc saved you writing up this solution to commit a bunch of code that was going to have to be tested and maintained that wasn't needed. There clearly was a good reason for the tech doc to be rejected, and that reason wouldn't have magically disappeared just because you didn't write the tech doc. So I think this is a chance to learn and see if we could have identified this issue earlier and even avoided writing the tech doc. But still, only throwing away a tech doc is much better than throwing away a lot of code that you've already worked on and is being maintained. Thanks for going through all of that with me today. As I mentioned at the start of the video, I'll be following this video up with another one that'll dig more into the details about how you can write a technical doc, including a public template that I created. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like button below and subscribing. If you have any thoughts on anything else about tech docs that I missed, or if you don't agree with something I said, please leave a comment below. If you have any other comments, code you'd like me to review, or ideas you'd like me to talk about, you can reach me at chris@seniorcodereviewbuddy.com. Thanks. Have a great day.